Buying bagged feed is treated like the cost of owning chickens. It is not. It is a dependency. You pay $20 to $35 every time you drag a 50-pound sack home, and you tie your flock's survival to a supply chain that can fail without your consent. The alternative is not theoretical. It is a quiet, continuous protein system running on your own waste streams. A single 20-gallon tote can replace up to $500 of commercial feed a year for a flock of 10 to 15 birds. The difference is structural. A flock that consumes purchased inputs is a liability. A flock fed from your own system becomes an asset for long-term food security.
The engine is the black soldier fly. Not a trick, a biological conversion system. You leverage the insect's life cycle, not your wallet. Kitchen scraps, garden waste, and even your own chicken manure go in. High-protein larvae come out, and the larvae remove the labor for you. When they reach the point of maximum stored energy, they climb out on their own. Your job is to build a container that turns that predictable behavior into a daily harvest.
Commercial units exist. They cost $200 to $500. They work because the biology is sound, not because the plastic is special. The same biology pays off in a simple 20-gallon plastic storage tote with a tight lid. The key is a self-harvesting design. Mature black soldier fly larvae stop eating, darken from cream to brown or black, and instinctively migrate upward to seek a dry place to pupate. You set the path and the exit. Drill half-inch holes around the top edge of the tote, about 2 inches from the lid, spaced every 3 to 4 inches around the perimeter. Fix a simple ramp on the inside wall, wood or rigid plastic at a 35 to 45 degree angle leading up to those holes. Secure it with waterproof adhesive or screws so it does not shift under load. Place a collection container directly beneath the exit path. A 5-gallon bucket or a shallow tray both work. When the larvae hit the migratory stage, they climb, pass through the holes, and drop themselves into your bucket. You do not dig through decomposing material. You do not guess what is ready. You collect only peak value protein because the insect does the sorting for you.
Most people overcomplicate the startup, chasing lab conditions or buying eggs. You do not need either. You need to send a clear ecological signal that says nursery. That signal is a controlled, sweet fermentation plume. A simple bait slurry of overripe bananas, molasses, and a small amount of bread yeast in the bottom of the tote broadcasts the right chemistry. In warm conditions, that scent carries, and any female black soldier fly within roughly a half mile recognizes a suitable site for her offspring. That is the invitation. Now you give her a safe place to deposit the future workforce.
Females do not lay eggs in the wet food. They search for dry, protected crevices just above it. Corrugated cardboard is the cheapest, most effective substrate because it mimics those crevices. Cut a 6-inch square, peel back one face to expose the fluted channels, and suspend it 2 to 3 inches directly above the bait using wire or string attached to the lid. The geometry matters, close enough that the hatchlings drop into food, far enough that the eggs stay dry and safe. A single female lays a clutch of 500 to 900 eggs. In about 4 days, those eggs hatch, the tiny larvae fall, and the conversion engine switches on.
From that point, you are managing energy flow. The larvae are voracious. They can consume roughly twice their body weight daily, and they are not picky. Vegetable peelings, fruit cores, coffee grounds, stale bread, weeds, grass clippings, and manure from chickens, rabbits, or goats all become input. This is why the system belongs on a homestead. It is a waste management unit that outputs feed. Run correctly, a biopod can process up to 10 pounds of organic waste per square foot of surface area per day. A standard 20-gallon tote has roughly 2 square feet of surface area, which means it can convert over 10 pounds of waste into protein and residue daily. Odors drop because the larvae outcompete houseflies and consume the material before it rots anaerobically. You reduce external pests while building internal resilience. That is system behavior, not a trick.
Timing is your leverage. After 14 to 18 days of continuous feeding, larvae hit maximum size and fat content and shift into the pre-pupal stage. Color change is your indicator. Cream gives way to dark brown or black. Feeding stops. Migration begins. At that moment, the ramp and exit holes turn instinct into labor. Larvae climb, exit, and fall into your collection bucket. You wake up to a daily harvest without touching the bin. A well-tuned 20-gallon unit self-harvests roughly a quarter to a half pound of larvae per day. That is not supplemental trivia. That is enough dense protein to move flock health and egg quality in a measurable way. Thin, pale yolks shift to dense, darker yolks because the birds are eating a live, amino-rich feed, not just grain. Output without storage is still a dependency. Production pulses with temperature. In colder periods, larvae slow down, which is why you bank surplus when throughput is high. 2 methods do the job without complexity. Drying. Spread harvested larvae in a single layer on a baking sheet and use the lowest oven setting, around 150 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit, for 2 to 3 hours until they are dry and crisp. Dried larvae exceed 40% protein and store for months in airtight containers. Freezing. Bag live larvae and freeze. That preserves moisture and many birds prefer the texture. You have converted a daily pulse into a storable asset. That is the shift from novelty to year-round seed source. Feeding closes the loop. Black soldier fly larvae provide protein plus essential amino acids such as lysine and methionine, and they bring calcium and phosphorus that support strong shells. Scatter them on the ground to trigger natural scratching and pecking, or mix them into regular feed to raise protein intake. You will see the behavioral response immediately, more activity, stronger foraging, and you will see structural outcomes over time, healthier birds and eggs with stronger shells and darker, more nutrient-dense yolks. You are not adding a treat, you are changing the nutrition profile of your flock with feed you grew from your own waste.
At this point, the economics are obvious, but the bigger leverage is control. Every dollar spent on bagged feed is a vote for a system you do not operate. Every larvae you harvest is a vote for a closed loop you do control. Protein security does not begin at the feed store or on an ingredients label. It begins when you redirect your waste stream into a biological engine that upcycles it into feed on site. That is why a single tote can erase hundreds of dollars in costs and still reduce odors and pest pressure. You are aligning with the insect life cycle and letting its programmed behavior do the work. Failure in this domain is predictable. If you treat this like a gadget or a seasonal chore, you get inconsistent results and you go back to buying bags. If you treat it like a system, structure, signal, nursery, input flow, timed harvest, storage, and integration, you compound small actions into multi-year stability. The larvae's migration becomes your harvest mechanism. Your scraps become your flock's protein. Your bird's manure becomes tomorrow's input. The consequence, over years, is a flock that feeds more from your landscape and less from a pallet of pellets. This is the line between owning chickens and operating a food system. The black soldier fly is not a trick to cut this month's bill. It is the engine that connects your waste stream to your protein stream and turns a dependent flock into a productive component of a self-sustaining homestead.
Lesson 1. Treat the biopod as a system: structure, signal, input flow, timed harvest, and storage, because consistent design choices, not occasional effort, determine whether the unit is an asset or a liability over years. Lesson 2. Timing governs output and resilience. Aligning life cycle stages, harvest windows, and storage strategies with seasonal temperature rhythms converts production pulses into bankable protein and reduces long-term dependency on purchased feed. Consider mapping your waste streams and testing the framework with a single 20-gallon tote, observing larva timing, yields, and storage needs across seasons. Share what you learn or ask questions to continue refining the approach. This content is educational. Adapt systems to your local climate, conditions, and experience level.